Want to get you another live look at the Democratic National Convention underway in its final night in Chicago. Vice President Kamala Harris will take the stage tonight to formally accept her party's nomination for president. Tonight, her campaign says she's going to focus on three objectives here. That's sharing her story and her record, contrasting her agenda with the former President Donald Trump's, and rooting for her vision in a sense of patriotism. Some delegates are hoping to hear about immigration and border security.
In El Paso, we're on the border. I think making sure that we manage the border in a correct fashion. The bad rap and the bad reputation that we've been given by Republicans in our own state and nationally, the rhetoric that there's chaos, there's an invasion. We need to counteract all of that.
We know many will be watching tonight's Democratic Convention wrap up, and that includes our media partners at Texas Monthly. They've actually been looking at something that some call the Kamala effect and how it could change the outlook for Texas Democrats. At least that's the question. So we've got Alex Samuels joining us to talk about this. Alex, I want to first talk about, the differences between the two candidates we have, Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. Can you talk to me about how they are different when it comes to the different types of voters that they're attracting?
Sure. So some of the more recent polls of the race show that many of the same voting patterns that were evident in the Biden-Trump matchup continue to be seen today, really. So Harris fares better than Trump among younger voters, Black and Asian voters, and voters with college degrees. And by comparison, Trump does better among older voters, white voters, and voters without a college degree. The biggest difference that polls are picking up since President Biden dropped out of the race in July is that Harris is polling better among many of these groups than Biden did. And that is what's making the presidential race tighter than it was just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, kind of the X factor this early into the change, not early in the race. We know we're only 75 days from that, but in terms of the change on the Democratic side of things. When we talk about Texas and the races that matter here, what does this do in terms of the big races like a Ted Cruz versus a Colin Allred?
Well, energy from Harris's campaign among her Democratic base could pull out some new voters for all. But you'll notice one thing is I didn't mention Latino voters in my last answer, and that's because Latino voters in Texas are really different from Latino voters nationally. So in Texas, one thing we know is that Latino voters have trended toward the Republican Party. So even though Harris has demonstrated success with Latino voters nationwide, that hasn't quite panned out in Texas yet. There was a new poll actually that came out today from the University of Houston that suggests Allred is polling well among Texas Latinos. In fact, according to this one survey, he's doing better than Cruz and better than Harris. So that's good news for Allred. And then, of course, any energy Harris can bring from the Democratic side is just a little extra boost. And of course, because, Texas hasn't elected a statewide Democrat in 30 years, the idea of Allred winning might seem like a crazy long shot, but, Allred is going to need these micro advantages in order to make it happen. And I think that Harris, to an extent, can help him with that.
And I want to ask you about that. Does that surprise you?
Allred's success or, where he is in the polls doesn't quite surprise me. Even before Kamala Harris, I guess, was the presumptive nominee, and I guess that will be confirmed tonight. Polls showed a pretty tight race for the Senate. It was pretty much in single digits. I think some polls had Cruz up by, 10 or so, and we're seeing that margin really narrow as we get closer to Election Day. I think now, of course, with Harris at the top of the ticket, that is energizing voters more across the nation. And we're seeing that in Texas, too. So I think that's why specifically with the poll today, we saw, Allred really narrowing that margin with Cruz to 2 percentage points. And what's really interesting about that poll is that he's actually running ahead of Harris in the state. So that poll had Harris behind Trump by, roughly 5 points, while Cruz was up by about 2 points. So it doesn't quite quite surprise me. But again, Allred is going to need, those advantages from Latino voters, independent voters specifically, to really put him over the edge.
Absolutely a big race to watch, though. And I want to go back to, you kind of just touched on it, the Harris effect, right? How that may be shaking up the outlook when it comes to Texas Democrats, if they are attracted to her, if they show up for her. How do you expect the Harris effect, though, to kind of be the main character tonight at that DNC?
Right. So when I use the term the Harris effect, what I was trying to do was summarize what we're seeing in the polls, which indicates energy, again, among a younger, non-white voter base that potentially could lead to turnout that moves the race in her favor in various swing states. We could see her cater to demographics certain demographics in the issues she highlights tonight. For example, reporting suggests she's going to try to reach out to middle-class voters by talking about her own story and her upbringing, being raised by a working mother. And then from a Texas perspective, the convention has elevated Colin Allred and Representative Jasmine Crockett, both of Dallas. That could help galvanize Black voters in the state. But the reality is that in order for Harris to succeed, she's going to have to build a wide coalition that bridges together voters from all walks of life. So well, turnout among key groups could be how her campaign impacts very specific Texas races, like the Senate race, which we talked about. I think we will see her as a candidate really reach out to different types of voters in her quest to ultimately win the presidency.
And I think to your point, that's something that we heard kind of the Obamas echo in their speeches, that, hey, the momentum is great, but there is still a lot of work to be done and a very short period of time to do it. So with that, we say thank you, Alex Samuels over at Texas Monthly. Always a pleasure to talk to you. If you want to read more about this, you can do that at texasmonthly.com.